Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Madden and Benz Unfiltered. Tim Benz, Mark Madden with you, brought to you by Bella Construction. With 27 years of experience specializing in roofing, siding, windows, and doors, their large purchasing power means unbeatable prices and top quality. For a free estimate, call 724-515-5163 or visit mybellaRoof.com. Bella Construction, where quality and affordability meet. Mark, the Steelers didn't play yesterday. They do play on Sunday against the Washington Commanders. The second half of the season begins. This vaunted, difficult second half of the schedule is upon the Steelers. How do you see it going? I've got them at 5-4. I wonder if I'm being generous, but I'm going to go with 5-4.
Yeah, that's not unreasonable. I think these first two games are going to really tell a tale because Washington's real good. They're 7-2. The quarterback's for real. Their offense is third in yardage and fourth in points. They're going to be tough to stop, but then again, perhaps not for an elite defense. This is a game where we find out if this defense really is elite or if it's just so much blah, blah, blah because it has a few big names. I'm actually betting on the latter. That's not to say I don't think the Steelers can win this game because I think they can. But I think it's going to be up to Russ more than it is that defense. I think Jane Daniels is going to get his.
Do you think they'll have another wide receiver in the mix to help them out?
Tim, I know they almost got Christian Kirk from Jacksonville before he broke his collarbone. That's on top of Brandon Ayuk. That's on top of Devontae Adams. The trade deadline's tomorrow. Tim, forget the election. I can't wait to see who they almost get at the trade deadline. It's going to be epic, classic.
That's a good point. I was on DVE this morning making the same sort of joke that the TV stations are going to have trouble figuring out what to lead with in the A block at 11. End of democracy as we know it. Civil war upon us. Steelers almost get another wide receiver. I actually was talking about who they will get. I don't think that's going to be the case. We should talk about who they might get because we're just like speaking this into reality. This Christian Kirk spin from over the weekend to me was hilarious. Like, if they wanted to get that deal done, get the deal done. And if they came that close and didn't get it done, I'm not going to blame Christian Kirk's collarbone. I'm going to blame the Steelers for not pushing it across the finish line or at least convincing the Jaguars to not play him, like Deontay Johnson didn't play, like Devontae Adams didn't play. Don't play him if you're that close then and a deal is really about to happen. To me, that just feels like after-the-fact spin to make it feel like,
Tim, hold on. I don't believe a deal was really about to happen. Do I believe that? I honestly think, and this won't be a popular sentiment, I think Omar Khan's out of his depth as a GM. I think he's a bean counter that got promoted because he was the next in line. I think he'd be definitely football decisions to Andy Weidel. And by way of evidence, if they don't get a receiver now and they desperately need one, that's a strike against the con artist. And trading Deontay with no clear-cut plan B for a cornerback they probably could have got after he got cut is a black mark as well. I am not sure he's up to the job despite the tag of con artist.
Well, let's just say this. I mean, the fact that Deontay Johnson has come back into the AFC North and they're going to have to play him twice, to me, like, you could walk away right now and say they won the deal with the Panthers because the Panthers only had Deontay Johnson for 8 weeks in a bad season, whereas Dante Jackson has helped the Steelers. But now if Deontay Johnson comes to the Ravens and helps the Ravens beat you once, let alone twice, then that's not so clear of a win anymore in terms of the trade. You might have beaten the Panthers, but big deal. You got to win the deal, and the deal has to include some sort of backfill to replace Deontay Johnson.
I think it's, that basic, that they blew it because they still don't have a number 2 receiver. I'm sorry. I think the guy's a bean counter. That's what he was before he became GM. I don't think he's done a good job. I think this roster is very flawed, and we're talking about 2 huge mistakes if they don't get a receiver.
Well, I don't like the approach that some have taken, which is, Russell Wilson is going to make Calvin Austin and Van Jefferson pass offable, decent enough. He's going to get more out of them. Okay, well then what more would he have gotten out of a legit number 2 wide receiver? How much better could the offense have been if that was the case and they had one in the fold already instead of making 3s and 4s into barely 4s and 3s? You know what I mean? Like, why not have a second legit option and really having a passing attack then?
Well, and what happens if George Pickens gets hurt? Because then the offense is dead. It's not just crippled, Tim. The offense is dead if George Pickens gets hurt. Again, I think the mistake made with Deontay and then not having replaced him is inexcusable. I mean, I think he's a bean counter. I'm going to keep coming back to that till he proves me wrong.
It's too bad for Dante Jackson, too, because I think he's been good.
He's been real good, real good. But I think they need a number 2 receiver more than they need Dante Jackson. I think they could have got by, especially once Cam Sutton gets back. I mean, I don't know. It depends where your priorities are. In the era of offense, I want the number 2 receiver. And if Russell Wilson can't elevate Van Halen and Kenny the Kangaroo, like he's done a good job of so far, but if that can't be continued, you know who's going to get blamed, don't you? Not Omar Khan, not the receivers, but Russell Wilson.
Yeah, and not the coach and not the offensive coordinator either, because it's a lot easier to go to the quarterback who might not be here next year, especially if they don't win a playoff game, which, let's be honest, they put themselves in a position where that can honestly be an expectation now because they're winning the division at the halfway point. If you can at least go 500 or better, 5-4 or better, then you're probably talking about winning the division and getting a home playoff game. And if you get a home playoff game against a lesser team in the AFC this year, that's a game that you should win. It's not about pulling off a magic upset like we're hoping to do Mason Rudolph after the snow game in Buffalo. Like that, all we were doing was crossing our fingers for that one. You can at least put yourself in a position where you should win a game in the postseason.
Well, I don't know that 11-6 for sure wins the division.
No,
okay, they could lose to Baltimore twice and still go 11-6. And I think they do need to win the division to win a playoff game. No question about that. And I think to win the division, they need a second receiver better than what they got. But looking at the more immediate future, Tim, would it shock you if they lost to Washington and Baltimore back to 6-4, back in the mushy middle? I'm not predicting that, but it wouldn't surprise me.
Oh, no, it wouldn't surprise me either because Washington's real good. I think they're still unbeaten at home. Steelers have to go on the road for this one, coming off the bye. Maybe they're a little lackluster coming out of the bye. It wouldn't be the first time. So, no, that wouldn't shock me. And it wouldn't shock me if they lose to the Ravens because they often split with the Ravens. You know, I get it. They were great in the division the last couple of years, but two of the last 3 years. Everybody was 3-3 2 years ago. But generally speaking, they usually split with the Ravens or win the season series. But that's not a guarantee. The Ravens just put up 40 points. Like 2 AFC North rivals just put up 40 points over the weekend, and one of them came against a good defense in Denver. The Steelers didn't put up 40 against Denver with Justin Fields at the quarterback. So, no, I wouldn't be shocked at that at all.
And my big challenge is, see, I know the defense is very good, but it's not elite like it always postures and is always postured on their behalf. If this defense is elite, remember when key quarterback would never beat a Dick LeBeau defense?
Mm-hmm.
Well, Terrell Austin, you're no Dick LeBeau. And this defense ain't that defense. I'm tired of all the talk. I'm tired of all the elite labeling. Go to Washington and beat a rookie quarterback. And if you don't, you're not elite, period.
Yeah, and Jaden Daniels isn't the average rookie quarterback either, to underscore your point. That's going to be a real challenge for them. And McLaurin is an excellent wide
but if
receiver.
the defense is elite.
No, I got you. I got the premise. I'm just saying, I think, to you, as you are saying, while we overrate the Steelers' defense a lot of the times, let's not just put the rookie tag on Jaden Daniels and assume that's going to come into play as part of the calculus here, because I think he's definitely better than that and is worthy of a lot of the roses that have been thrown at his feet. But let's get to the Penguins, Mark, because they've actually played a little bit better in the last 2 games. Speaking of taking on competition that you should beat, they've done that at least. They beat the Ducks. They beat the Canadians, neither of whom are really worth crowing about. But I'm just happy to actually see some wins. And I'm happy to see Sidney Crosby get back on track. We talked about this during the podcast quite a bit. for today on Madden Monday. You think that's a direct correlation with him playing with Evgeny Malkin and by extent also what Ricard Raquel has done on that line. How long do they keep that going? Is this just a quick pop until they get Brian Rust back, or is this something you want to stick and continue with beyond that?
It's something I would not immediately abandon once Rust does come back, although I'm sure they will. The Penguins don't have enough talent to figure out balance, whether Crosby and Malkin are on separate lines or not. They should leave them on the same line till it fizzles out, which it might, probably will, eventually. But right now, those two create so much space for each other. Even though the other team can match a checker up against them, checking line, there's still two of them. And there's still such a threat. Raquel finds the seam. So, yeah, I would leave that line together for the time being until it fizzles. But I'm with you, Tim. I wouldn't get too excited about winning these last two games because all they did was beat two teams at home, opponents that are at their level, and did it very narrowly.
I guess one other thing to point at, and I don't know if this is something to be optimistic about, or at the very least, it's worth pointing out for the sake of giving credit. At least Carlson's been a little bit better, too, this past week.
So is Ryan Graves.
Same thing, yeah.
I would attribute that more to Anaheim and Montreal, the opposition. We'll see how he does at the Island. Well, Queens now. I'm so used to saying at the Island, but the Islanders no longer play on Long Island. We'll see how he does at Queens against a team that the Penguins have had a lot of trouble with recently.
The Islanders are always just a pain in their ass, that's for sure. They got a lot of games against the Metro. You can make the schedule and the standings feel a lot better than they are after the slow start if they hold their own in the Metro and get, 5 points out of 6 in what's coming up here on this swing. That's a heavy ask, but it's also something that they need to do to make up time and make up space, is to win games that they shouldn't win because they've lost games along the way that they could have won or shouldn't have lost. And that's what they got themselves into last year, to be honest, and they never dug themselves out. I don't know how sustainable the Malkin Crosby thing is. That's always something that feels like it works in quick bursts, like OD on cold medicine to make yourself feel better in the short term, but is it really making the cold go away? Probably not. But I don't want to get in this conversation, Mark, where we get into, okay, if they're going to stick with it, who do they trade for to get a second line center? Or who do they trade for to replace Malkin on left wing?
No. Don't worry about none of that. They're not going to trade to get help now. There is no way that happens. They have what they have, and before long they'll have even less because that's the direction this is headed, no matter who likes it and doesn't, and that includes the locker room.
I would also go so far as to say for somebody who is benefiting from this, in Ricard Raquel, he's very much a guy we can talk about immediately that could be traded because he is starting to look better by association with Crosby and Malkin and playing on that top line.
That's one reason I keep that line together, to up Raquel's value for when the trade deadline comes, or sooner.
I think it's probably going to happen, that somebody can take a look at him and say, okay, he went through a slump last year. You're playing with good players. He'll be better for us. And then you get a little something for him. It's not going to be massive. It's not going to be the return that people think. Heck, let's look at it right now.
I think if he's headed for a 30-goal season, you might be surprised at the return.
Oh, really? You think it's going to be like more, I wouldn't say more significant than Gensel, but people didn't walk away thrilled after the Gensel return either.
Oh, no, I think you could get a second-round pick, though.
Mm-hmm.
I think the likely return is a high second-round pick for Pettersson, a high third-round pick for Raquel. And that could jump into low first and low second.
When are we going to start seeing the fruits of some of those guys that they got for Jake Gensel, do you think? Whether that's Bunting playing better, Ponomarov getting put in, when does this come to fruition?
I think Ponomarov should go in the bottom six the minute he's done with getting in hockey shape at Wilkes. I don't think Koivunen is ready. The other guys, I think it's a matter of when they're ready. There's no need to rush anybody given the circumstances of the team. And that goes for Blomqvist too, who I think should be in the minors ASAP. I really don't give a damn about Jari being broken. I don't care about his future. I put him in that blue paint and tell him to earn his money. And if your head's wrong, try at least not to let your eyes get crossed when you fish the puck out of the net. Like they have to concentrate more on the future than they do the immediacy.
Mark, are you excited that Juan Soto is going to talk to all 30 teams, maybe even including the Pirates? I think they got a real shot at him. How about you?
I think the Steelers might almost get him.
That's right. Juan Soto is going to play wide receiver for the Steelers, and Christian Kirk's going to back cleanup for the Pirates. That's what's going to come of all this.
How about Jared Triolo got a utility man gold glove? Is that right?
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Okay. How does a guy not good enough to start get recognized as one of the game's top fielders? If he is that good of a fielder, why isn't he starting? Or maybe that's the Gold Glove people inadvertently delegitimizing their own awards because defense doesn't matter that much. Is there a Gold Glove for the best bullpen catcher? Where's it stop?
Well, that goes to the point that I make all the time about the Pirates and how I think they overvalue the quest for defense. Like, I heard somebody say after this happened that, this is something that will, like, somebody who's being critical of the Pirates basically said, this is something that we won't remember in 5 years. And I stridently disagree with that. It's something we'll remember forever because no one will ever let us forget it. Jared Triolo won a Gold Glove. We talk about Michael A. Taylor and how important his defense was the whole time. Well, they didn't play him. They probably played him more than we want to, but we said that because of his offense. And at some point, we meet a point of diminishing returns by the quest overall to find defense. Like, I think what they're doing with O'Neal Cruz. Like, I think what they're doing a lot of times with Isaiah Kiner-Falefa. These metrics on defense to me kind of put them in a spin cycle where they never get the best lineup on the field because they're so scared of putting guys in a defensive position of value that they're getting lesser hitters in there by extent, and they're platooning good hitters instead of finding fielders that, just should be extra guys. They do this to themselves all the time.
Well, with the Pirates, there's only one story. It's being largely ignored, and that is that their only chance of winning is in the next 3 years because that's the only time they're going to have schemes. So they need to be going out and getting bats now. They won't, but that's what they absolutely must do. But they're going to act like it's the long game and we'll sign schemes and blah, blah, blah. And there is no chance whatsoever they're going to sign Paul Skeens past his arbitration. None. If you offered him $500 million for 10 years, he would say no because he'll get the same elsewhere and have a chance to win. And they're not going to make that offer anyway. The next 3 years are their only chance to win for a long time moving forward, and they will not act on it because it is not in their intent to win. They don't care about it at all, no matter what they say. And this is going underreported because almost all the media that covers the Pirates are sellouts and stooges.
Mark, let's get to college football because I think both Pitt and Penn State do what they so often do. They did what they so often do, which is live down to expectations and live to the storyline, live to the moment. Pitt lost the game before the game that they needed to win before the big game, and Penn State lost the big game to Ohio State and or Michigan, in this case, Ohio State. They are exactly who we expect them to be every year, and it manifested again this weekend, twice in the same day.
Well, now, I'm not going to be so down on Pitt. I'm not sure losing on the road to a ranked team with what Pitt's got is a disgrace. It was bad that they fell behind so far, and I wonder if they have a quarterback controversy now with Eli Holstein having played 3 straight subpar games and Yarnell coming in and going 9 for 10 for a couple touchdowns at garbage time, admittedly, against SMU. But I'm not so down on Pitt. At 7-1, I think that's still pretty good. I just hope they don't do what Pitt too often does and lose at home to Virginia. But if they're 8-1 going into Clemson at home, that game will light Pittsburgh on fire. That'd be huge if they get to that, regardless of being disappointed to some degree by losing at SMU. As far as Penn State goes, it was now or never, and they chose never. And just like Penn State looks down at Pitt because Pitt's a level below, and Pitt is a level below. But just like Penn State looks down at Pitt for being a level below, Penn State is a level below Ohio State in their ilk. Penn State is not in that class. That game on Saturday was water finding its own mediocre level. Penn State will make that 12-team playoff this year, probably make it most every year, but they are a level below. And Franklin going 1-10 against Ohio State confirms that. And it ain't just Franklin. Okay, it's Penn State. It's the program. It's the players. It ain't just him. Penn State is a level below.
I think one thing that's really going to bring Franklin's fate into question, which is, like you just said, they're a level below. The level right now, it feels like in the Big Ten, is Ohio State and Michigan. Then Penn State's here, and then below them is the rest of the Big Ten. And, there's no – Wisconsin right now to me isn't where it has sometimes been, which is right there with Penn State as the potential third team. Same thing for Michigan State. That's another example that you could throw in there. Those other teams after Penn State are sort of taking turns being the fourth team or the fifth team that could be a threat. But with Penn State kind of constantly being the third team, it sort of justifies their place in the ecosystem. I don't know. There's a lot of Tomlin comparisons you can make here between Franklin and Tomlin in the sense, what's harder to do, being 10-2 every year in the Big Ten or constantly winning 9 to 10 games in the NFL and just never winning a playoff game. It's a very similar net result between the two if you look at the college ranks and the pro ranks.
Yeah, but the thing is, I see Penn State fans on Twitter talking about wanting to fire Franklin. What, you're going to fire the guy because he lost to Ohio State by 3 and you're still going to get in the playoff anyway? You're going to fire that guy? Be careful what you wish for. Who are you going to get in that's going to do better?
I think they'd be able to get a flavor of the month coach, as big programs often do. But, how's that gone for Alabama? How's that gone for USC with Lincoln Riley? They could get the next Lincoln Riley, but I think Lincoln Riley's something like 6-10 in his last 16 games. So they could get somebody.
This is what Penn State is. And it doesn't matter much who the coach is as long as he's competent. And Franklin is probably better than most they could get. They should just stick with what they got and know their role and shut their mouth.
All right, let's get to some comments, one of which is actually on that very topic. It's a $56 million buyout for Franklin's contract. I'd say Penn State.
Shut up. Shut up.
What do you mean? About buying him out?
This guy. Yeah, shut up. Buy him out. Shut up. The next guy's going to do any better. Shut up.
Frank says, I'd say 6-2.
Well, that guy, excuse me. That guy at the end of what he said, he got it right. Penn State just isn't an elite program anymore. Live with it.
Frank says, I'd say 6-2 to the bye and finish at 10-7, but better QB play in the mushy middle once more. Well, if they get to 10-7, then they're 4-5. They're under 500. So you're basically talking about them. I don't even know how you would get there. What, you get 3 wins maybe in the North and you only win 1 outside of the North? That's possible. I mean, the Eagles are playing better. The Commanders are a better team. And then you got Kansas City on Christmas. That's the excess outside of the AFC North. And that's not easy. That's not easy at all. So, yeah, at that point, it becomes 10-7. You just hope that you won the right 10 to get in.
Oh, them 3 games at Christmas. Who are they? Tim? Baltimore, Kansas City, and who else?
Cincinnati.
Yeah, it's 3 games, bang, 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 because the Christmas game. The Steelers will be lucky if their season doesn't get crippled there and if they don't sustain a serious injury there because of too many games in too short a time. But the NFL doesn't care.
This guy, Ron, says, shout out to 3 former Pirate pitchers who are now World Series champions, Anthony Banda, Brent Honeywell, and Daniel Hudson. You want to throw that out there? How about Walker Buehler, a guy who the Pirates originally drafted, but he decided to go back and play college baseball. Then he came out and closed out the game for the Dodgers to win it in the 5th game. Garrett Cole and Clay Holmes also pitching for the Yankees that night. I don't know how you felt about this, Mark. It was definitely a love letter to the economics of baseball from baseball itself. This is how we want it to work out. We want Dodgers, Yankees every year. I'm tired of screaming into the void about baseball economics. So what I took into the World Series, which was admittedly very little, at least I was quasi-interested in it because it was the best baseball that could be offered with those two rosters. I'm just not going to scream and yell and screech about baseball economics and hope that it changes, because it never will.
I watched 4 innings, so I didn't care. But we shouldn't use that as an excuse for the Pirates, because they won't even selectively spend. They won't even spend when the time is right, like right now. They won't do it. They have no intent of ever doing it. We can talk, like you said, about the economics of baseball, which cripple teams like the Pirates. They don't kill teams like the Pirates. The Pirates immolate themselves in that regard, like, again, right now.
Calvin says Steelers win against Commanders. No, I don't think so. I think you saw the line come out, 2.5 points in favor of Washington. If I'm betting Washington, I feel pretty good about that. I would take the Commanders in this game. And then I don't know how I would feel about the next one against the Ravens after that. Let's see how healthy both teams are coming out of it. But you make me pick right now, I think Washington's on to something. And like you said, Mark, I want to see how this defense does against McLaurin and Jaden Daniels.
This elite defense. Tim, I want to say one more thing about Penn State, too. Given what went on up there with the scandal, and that Penn State hadn't been elite for years because Paterno stayed long past his sell-by date, did you Penn State Nimrods really think this program was ever going to be truly elite again? You're lucky it is what it is. You're ungrateful is what you are. You're lucky it is what it is.
Do you think that part of the angst about the Franklin era, Mark, is a direct tie to how Joe left still all these years later? Like, do you think people are still less than willing to embrace Franklin because they're still bitter about how Joe went out?
No, I think people now are just stupid and don't understand the situation. By the way, you know who the real hero of Penn State football is? And nobody ever says it. Bill O'Brien. Bill O'Brien came in the transition coach after Paterno and obviously left early. But he allowed Franklin to be not the guy who succeeded Paterno, but the guy who succeeded the guy who succeeded Paterno, which is the guy you would much rather be. Bill O'Brien steadied the ship when it was damn near impossible and deserves a lot more credit than he gets.
That's a very fair point. He also deserves a lot of credit, and the real reason he's a hero is because he screamed in Tom Brady's face, which I still appreciate all these years later. And he's actually did a decent job getting Boston College back up and running, too. Last one, Mark, what do you do as a GM with Drew O'Connor? Sign him or trade him?
Depends on the price. I would like to keep him. He's young. He's good. He's versatile. He's big. Depends on the price. I'd like to sign him.
Yeah, I think he's someone you can keep for not too much, and he can be a guy that slides up and down the lineup. Hey, listen, if you sign him for a couple of years and he's still here 2-3 years from now as time passes and you are allegedly getting better and rebuilding after the core has started to leave, then that's good. You know, you got yourself a bargain. But yeah, you don't overpay to keep a guy. They shouldn't overpay to keep anybody, which is why I didn't like what they did with Jari, which is why I didn't like what they did with Raquel, which is why I didn't think it was right to keep all the core 3 guys together. They were not in a position where that was ever going to reap the rewards of the price tag to keep all those guys together.
O'Connor has to be careful, too, because I can name a bunch of guys in hockey who went someplace else for a little more money and maybe even to a better team, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when they got there, they weren't seen in the same favorable light they were at their previous place. I think the Penguins really like O'Connor. I think that's a part of it. Sullivan, who's going to be coach forever, likes him. I wouldn't walk away from that for just a little bit more money. A lot more money, yes. Maybe not a little bit.
Have we figured out a way to get the Mark Madden helicopter in the air today, Mark, so you can fly over the tunnel and back home after your show in Bridgeville and avoid the chaos today in the city?
Am I going to have trouble getting there?
Well, I don't know. At that point,
Bridgeville.
I would think so, because like Trump is talking at what, 6:30? Is that right? I think he's talking somewhere around 6:30. So I know I've got to get to the UPMC Cooper Fieldhouse at Duquesne across the street from PPG Paints Arena for an 8 o'clock game on TV. I don't know how I'm going to do that. I might just burrow a tunnel to get there.
No. I'm saying me getting to Bridgeville for 2 o'clock.
Oh,
I should be okay
out
there, right?
Yeah, I think you'll be all right. You might want to leave yourself a little bit more time. But now that Kamala's talking to the Carrie Furnace, I believe, you don't have to worry about the Point State Park hullabaloo. So you should be able to get out.
Where the hell is Carrie Furnace?
It's like along the Mon, like up towards Swissvale-ish.
I'll be glad when this is all over. Really glad.
Yeah, well, as we said, the big story is what the Steelers get or what the Steelers don't get in the trade market at wide receiver. Film at 11, Block B, what happened in the election. That's where it's going to go down on the local newscast. That's what I'm rooting for.
Yeah, I'm just discouraged. There's no shades of gray in any of this, which suck. And like what people don't want to admit is this is all about picking sides and being mad. For 98% of you, your lives won't change at all after Tuesday, at all. But whatever. Yeah. Be mad. It's the national pastime. We didn't even talk about Jason Kelce.
Throwing the cell phone, yeah. Or talk about Joel Embiid, the basketball player who shoved the Philadelphia sports reporter for writing a column he didn't like. He proved that he wasn't soft by letting his feelings get hurt to the point that he had to shove a reporter. That's how he proved he wasn't soft, Mark.
We haven't seen such athlete-on-media violence, Tim, since Wayne Van Dorp went after Tom McMillan.
Or what about Barrasso and you? Was Van Dorp and McMillan worse?
Oh, yeah, Barrasso swung the stick at me. That's true. That's right.
There you go. All right, so Madden and Benz Unfiltered back next week after the Washington game, provided that we are not in the middle of chaos across the country. If we still have internet up and running, we will do this at 9:30 on Monday. Make sure you're a part of it. Listen to the Madden Monday podcast. It's posted right now. And check out Mark's show at 2 o'clock today. I'll be on the air talking Steelers on Wednesday for Countdown to Kickoff on Fox Sports Pittsburgh 970. And on DVE tomorrow morning, doing sports in place of Mike Pursuta. This is Madden Benz Unfiltered, brought to you by MyBellerRoof.com.